license and registration, he can sense your aggravation.
On the head of the fallen angel.
When the world is muttering under the floorboards, stomp even louder.
Time.
Let them know you are alive today.
Or unhum.
Did you know that your hands came with a ripple effect?
Whisper tones unraveling like silk.
Blood, sweat, and tears win by any means poetry.
Sway, look at me. Is a piece of the pie too good for me?
Some may call it rock the mic. We call it poetry.
Hello, Sojourn with Words family. We're very happy to be back with you again. And as always, we have a stellar poet that is going to let us know all about what she's been up to, but also, of course, share some of her wonderful poetry. I'm speaking of Ann Ritter. And as always, we like to begin by letting you know just who we have with us in the Sojourn with Words show today. So, Ann Ritter is a Quaker businesswoman, author and performer, PhD, emphasizes, now this is a word I had to look up, and I like that when I learn something new, somatics, which describes the practice that uses the mind-body connection to help you survey your internal self and listen to your body signals about the areas of pain, discomfort, and imbalance. So anyway, back to Ann. She emphasizes communication, authentic leadership in her professional practice. Now, Ann strives toward a sense of belonging for all who in her yoga practice, yes, you'll hear, yoga practice and teaching, her writing and consulting, and her performance work. She often melds storytelling, movement, and poetry into narrative work for the stage. So Dr. Ritter has taught strategic business communication in Georgia State University's Robinson College of Business, as well as, and I don't know if I'm going to get this right, Kundalini yoga and meditation, and applied yoga therapy in many settings. As obvious, she is a published poet. She's also a journalist and a fiction writer. And on occasion in Atlanta, she has acted. So, welcome, Ann Ritter. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are just excited because you are such a diverse creative. And we know that there's going to be much that you can share with us about how you come to the creative process. Certainly, yoga weighs heavily into your life.
Mm-hmm.
And your writings are diverse as well because you do fiction writing, you of course write poetry, you also are an actress. Well, let's just hear from you. What is happening in your life right now? What is Ann doing?
Well, Ann is about to go back and teach at Georgia State after 2+ years of a COVID shutdown, and I have not been teaching at all, not even online. Didn't like that very much. It was very difficult. And I have been working on a book of poems that I'm currently sending out for possible publication. And the title is Notan Beauty, which is a Japanese term, and it's finding the balance between darkness and light. And it's often used in art and photography. But I thought that was a nice metaphor. So that's what I'm doing, and also just getting back into teaching yoga teachers up in North Carolina with a colleague. So that's what's going on right now, and trying to get through a major heat wave down.
Oh, yes, you're in Atlanta. So yes, that there's so much happening across the country right now, weather-wise. But, well, Ann, let's see, you've talked about the upcoming poetry book that you're working on, and certainly congratulations in advance I look forward to getting my copy.
Well, thank you.
I would love to let's share a little bit about where your work is currently available. So the Southern Poetry Anthology, Volume 5, Georgia. Her work is published there. There's a publication, Presence, a journal of Catholic poetry. Then there's Bearing the Mask, Persona Poems of the Southwest. Tell us about persona poems. Some of our viewers may not be familiar.
You are writing in the voice of, usually in this case, the call was someone famous, but you are writing as if you are living their life and looking out of their eyes.
Okay.
My case was Georgia O'Keeffe.
Oh, okay. Then there's, as far as publications where her works are available, there's also Snapdragon, which is an online quarterly. There's Adana, Women's Spirituality, Slipstream, The Elements. Then there's Earthways, also Gathered, an anthology of Quaker poets. And finally, Earth's Daughters, Flesh and Spirit. Oh, there's one more, Thema, Your Reality or Mine. And then there are others, but that I think for anyone who would like to see some of your work, locate your work, that's a good reference point. So Ann, with regard to the voice that you bring to your poetry, what is it that you think makes your voice unique among poets? When people talk about the poetry of Ann Ritter, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Storytelling,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
That I'm telling a story. My poems are not as lyrical and magical as, for example, our common, very admired colleague, Hiram LaRue. You know, his poems just dance and they're so magical. And mine are very earthbound. They're very grounded. They are very, very narrative. And not everyone likes that, but it's my voice. So
Absolutely. And with regard to the connective tissue between your creative work, i.e. your poetry, and your yoga and your meditation teaching, how does that come together? How does all that fit into Ann Ritter?
I think that there is a state that you go into in meditation, or when you are walking around trying to think about your poems. And there is a space where you meet, you as small s spirit meet big S spirit. And another word for that would be the divine. That's one of the goals of leading a meditative and yogic life off the mat. I think it's also the goal of creativity. And they're on the same continuum. And whenever I have struggled with time management, as you might imagine, I have quite a lot in my life. You know, I don't have enough time for my writing or to devote to my creative side because I've got a life and a family and a job and need to pay the mortgage. And I don't have time for the theater because I'm teaching yoga, and those two schedules conflict. And so I have sat down and asked Spirit, you know, how do I balance this? How do I get the seesaw going? And one of the answers I got was, it's all the same continuum. Yeah.
That was very much what I was feeling. I was saying, I hope you're not really viewing this as an either or.
No.
Absolutely. Well, when you approach the poetry, does the yoga the sense of movement enter your poetry? And when you're doing your yoga practice or even teaching your yoga practice, are there times when the poetry is flowing and you're trying to hold on to that because something occurred to you, something dwells in your spirit that was born through the movement?
Definitely. I'm sure that I've probably missed some poems that way, you know, and I just hope that little thread can come back, because when you are moving your body, so much of your creativity is embodied.
Yes.
And I had a writing teacher. She was actually one of my fiction teachers, and she had a little one of those, vacuum seal stickers on her dashboard, and she had a tiny notepad and a pen attached to it. And she said that was how she stopped missing those wonderful points, even when she was driving, that she would just scribble down something. Well, today that would probably get you pulled over. But, that's what she did. And she also said that when you have wound down for the day, that 20 minutes that you're going into sleep, that whatever characters or ideas or memories float up and come to you, that you should get right back up and write those down. That was another discipline thing. So the same thing can happen during a yoga, and particularly the meditation piece of it.
Absolutely.
Things will float up that are good things for your work.
Well, let's see. Let's go back and see, how did you come to this thing called poetry? Who are some of your favorite poets, both the classical and the contemporary?
Classical, I think Whitman, of course, and Frost, and those people we learned about all the way back in middle school. And probably some of my earlier work was really bad imitation of some of those classical poets before I found my own footing. Then coming forward a little bit more, Marianne Moore, Mary Oliver, and I think my absolute favorite is Sharon Olds. And I attended one of her readings up the street from my house at Agnes Scott College many years ago. And one of her poems absolutely brought me to sobbing. And I don't cry quietly. And so my companion said, "What happened to you?" Because thankfully it was the last poem she was going to read. And when she got finished, I leapt up and ran out the door because I was going to sob very loudly. I let all my pencils and my paper just fly to the floor. And I said, she moved me so very deeply with her
Wow.
Well, and one other I have found kind of obliquely, and I didn't realize she wrote poetry, is Ursula Le Guin, who is very well known, I think most well known for her science fiction. And she was, I just think, a very brilliant woman. She also wrote children's stories. And then when I found her poetry, it is equally lovely and insightful. And of course, she just left us a couple of years ago.
Okay. Well, what was it that prompted you to delve into poetry and seriously study and embark upon poetry as one of your life missions?
Well, I started out in fiction, and I've never tried to write a novel. I think that's a dirty word. Flannery O'Connor, by the way, said that poetry was a filthy habit for a fiction writer to get into. She wrote exactly one poem ever. But I started out on the fiction track, and then I had a 2-year-old and a really demanding corporate job, and I had to find something that was more concentrated. And so I thought, well, the poetry started coming out like you'd stepped on a tube of toothpaste. It just started squirting out in this very, very small stream, this concentrated way. And I thought, well, maybe this is it. This is easier. Well, it's not, of course, easier.
No.
But those were the first really bad poems. And then I thought, well, let's get better at this. I'm sure that I can work at it, and it can become more flowing over time. And it has. And I actually have spent more time on the poetry track in the last 5 to 10 years than I have on my fiction.
Okay. And now, speaking of time, what does it mean to give a poem as much time as it needs? And then there's the question of, well, are you giving the poetry time, Are you waiting for the muse, or are you in fact just wasting time?
Wasting time. Yeah. Well, I think I do a lot of both. And I am not as disciplined as other people who might call themselves professional poets, who sit down every day and, I'm going to pull up a poem. I'm going to write a poem. I'm a little more throw it against the wall than that. When the idea comes out, I try to get it down in a document, and that document might sit there a long, long time until whatever it was that inspired me comes back around. And then with the revisions, I will sit with it and then pick it up one day and open it and go, oh, I see exactly how to fix this. Literally, it's the 3 words that I needed to change that will make it publishable, or that will give it. It's like putting spice in food, that really brings the flavor out and makes people go, oh, I get it. So that's, a lot of both.
Okay. Now, do you find that you use more rhyme or more alliteration, or more metaphor, or what will we find when we start listening to and reading your poetry? What are you known for?
Some alliteration, never rhyming.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, that's a filthy word. And even if I start seeing too much rhyming or feeling too much rhyming in my poem, I'm going to start changing it. Rhythm is fine, but rhyming, no. Some metaphor, detail, sensory. I try to get as many senses involved and highlighted as I can. I guess I've always loved the sound of words and individual words and crunchy words and soft, slithery words. And so it's like walking through words, I think, that you will hear.
Well, we look forward.
Lots of memory.
Oh, okay. So you traveled back to recapture past experience.
Yeah, just the right word. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you mentioned that you have a book that's about to come out, and I'd like to allow our viewers to know a little bit about this current poetry project, your upcoming book, and tell us again the name of the book, and then tell us something about what we might find once we part the pages.
Notan Beauty, Notan, Notan Beauty, the harmonious arrangement of light and dark is the title of it. And it has 3 sections. And I haven't decided if the current arrangement is going to be the ultimate arrangement. The first section is more memory poems and are high personal. And the middle section delves into my relational life, if you will, and the passage of time. And then the third section is very contemporary and really opens out into the world. It's where the persona poems are, or the poems about famous people and places that I have visited, famous places. And there's a lot less about me in there. And I can't remember the word for where. It's not a found poem exactly, but I've had other people send me an email or something, and I'll say, can I have this? If I attribute it to you. And they said, why? And I said, because you sent me a poem, and I do the line breaks and I send it back to them. I go, here, here's your poem. You wrote it essentially, or you gave it to me in such fresh form. I just had to do that. So there are a lot of those in the third section.
Okay. Now, I heard you mentioned persona poems, and so you reference that with regard to persons as opposed to inanimate objects. Is that so? You don't write in the voice of a tree or a river. That's not something when you speak of persona poems. You're not speaking of that.
No. And I think that is a good and interesting trend that is coming to be now, is point of view of objects that are sentient but not human, and speaking of those energies. But all the ones I've done have been about people.
Okay. Well, I think it's time for our viewers to experience the poetry of Ann Ritter. So, Ann, we're happy at this point to invite you to share your poetry on Sojourn with Words. Viewers, sit back and enjoy. I know you will. Ann Ritter.
Thank you. This is my Georgia O'Keeffe poem, Essentials. The ruined hacienda finally became mine, mostly because I was Stiglitz's widow. The time was right for purchase. His death provided peace, freedom, most of all, cash. For a view I painted over and over, each brush stroke a prayer. I allowed only local women to sand, paint, spread paste, render delicate tones and textures. Oh, my bedroom, its tight corner that aims at the twisting road past Abiquiu. When I sat up in bed, I could see for miles until my eyes failed. Near the end, I rose in socks on the soft rock floors, ran grateful fingers across a wall stained taupe, the particular shade coveted, and scraped slowly from a rock face that spoke to me at Cerro Perdonel. That one red pillow punctuates my white on white bed. The color would vibrate as I wandered the spare kitchen, breathing deep of dried herbs. Rows of stainless steel canisters still bear my script. The label on my favorite reads merely, "Good tea." And the next is one of my memory poems, Etude. César Franck's The Doll's Lament is the only song my hands remember, though I wear my watch face inside my wrist as Miss Economy did, and a ring very like hers. She promised my fingers would grow to reach an octave plus. They never did. The lessons did not take, but much else did. The smell of lemon polish on her black piano, sight of honey-colored floors, and babble she spoke to aging Greek parents on the other side of a swinging door. Once I went through their quiet house to the bath, where I rubbed the soap, so solemn and amber. For 7 years of Tuesdays, I arrived early, waited for other lessons to be over, mine to start. From the bookcase beside where I sat, I devoured all of Pearl S. Buck and settled on my favorite encyclopedia photo, the wild man of Borneo. I coveted, most of all, another student's gift, a spicy cloved orange hanging from a red satin ribbon on the coat rack in the corner. And I came to love Chopin because his notes felt so different to the touch, as if I sensed, before being told, that he composed on the pianoforte. Years later, a Mozart violin sonata from the radio reached across centuries, struck not a piano key, but the exact place in my heart to release tears. Let me grieve the recently gone wise mother who'd insisted on those lessons. The announcer said Mozart penned the piece to honor his mother mere days after she died. And this one was inspired by reading Anne Sexton. Didn't mention her as an influence. Toward Solstice. The light lies in November. The undersides of hickories reflect a yellow which no longer exists come twilight. That bright blush that leaves wear comes from the shock of cold, and we are left with December days, heavy, quiet air. At dusk, wood smoke smells like olives. Dark calls us home. We draw into ourselves for long sleeps toward a core of light, waiting, still as crocuses in black earth. And one more memory poem. This is a very, very early memory. Mulberry, burnt orange, pistachio. The only time I remember my grandmother running, she carried me in a bucket. Its handle creaked. The fire fit the words conflagration and fully involved. Before we saw it, we felt its draw, heard its rush and hiss from deep in the woods down the dirt road. The yard when we arrived was ringed with buckets dangling from idle arms. A rectangle of mulberry, burnt orange, and pistachio flames danced among remaining 2x4s, had already eaten walls. The crowd stood there wretched, let the skeleton cave in on itself. Grandmother held me tightly against her, shocked to feel me straining toward the danger, bright and hot.
Okay, well, Ann Ritter. Thank you so much, Ann, for joining us here on Sojourn with Words. I have enjoyed having you as a guest, and I'm sure our viewers have enjoyed experiencing your poetry and getting to know you as well.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Yeah, I'm so pleased you asked me. And, as we're recording this, we are, right at the summer solstice. And I started not to read the winter one, but I thought that's a nice polarity. It's a nice example of things being on the same continuum. So it's just opposite of where we are. So.
Okay. Now, Ann, is there contact information that we can give our viewers that would like to reach out to you just in case?
I don't have a website, but anyone is welcome to contact me. I have a very old Earthlink account. I was an early adopter. I actually had a MindSpring account, but I finally had to dump that one. But it is asritter@earthlink.net. That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Ann, and thank you to each of our and all of our viewers for joining us here on Sojourn with Words on CTV, based in Prince George's County, but now viewed the world over. And we're very happy to be able to present such quality and stellar poets. Join us again next time. But remember, pick up a pen and keep writing. See you then.
Every 2 minutes, a woman in the U.S. is diagnosed with breast cancer. And in that moment, her life changes forever. The toll is great. The need is greater. The need to find comfort in the dark hours. The need to find hope in the cures. And that's why when others look away, we lean in. We're fighting alongside patients because we know one moment can change everything. But we need your help to make more moments of hope possible. Join our fight, save lives. Because we are all stronger together.